Okay, so we are on the second muscle lab. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Hold on. We are in lab 9. I've opened up the wrong one, lab 8. Let me just go back real quick. Need to be in lab 9, and we're essentially continuing with what we did before, with muscles relevant or identified or designated origins, insertions, and actions when designated to, hold on just a minute. Okay. Here, to identify particular muscles, origins, insertions, or actions where I've indicated that you need to know in this laboratory exercise for this week. So we started with the histology last week, and now we went from head and neck and torso muscles to the muscles of the arm, the forearm, the hand, and then the lower extremities, including the gluteal area. So I just want to make sure that I'm sharing to the right place. I Zoomed before and somehow did not save it. So I just want to make sure that we are sharing to the right documents. Okay, let's keep our fingers crossed. All right, so here is our lab 9. These over to the left-hand side are all the muscles you need to identify. Latissimus dorsi, pectoralis major, deltoid, biceps brachii, triceps brachii, brachialis, so forth and so on. If you need to know an origin, insertion, or action, it's filled in these particular squares. So you don't have to know that many of them. And most of them are fairly obvious or include points of osteology anatomy that you had to identify in the skeletal system osteology labs. And then there's a few actions that I ask you to know, and they're fairly easy to understand. So what I suggest is to always go through and make sure you can identify every muscle. Of course, print this out. And then you go back and you go, okay, which ones do I have to know some kind of origin, insertion, or action? And start memorizing those. There aren't that many. There's probably less than half of them here that you have to know. And then we go to the next page, which are the muscles of the lower appendages. So we have some that are on the anterior medial or posterior aspects of the leg and the gluteal area. So having had the lab last week, this is really just a continuation. So this is going to be fairly brief. So let me get into where we can see the images. And again, they pretty much, we just are identifying the images that you need to identify, and then you apply your origin, insertion, action to it. Now, I'm going to break that share and create another share in just a second. Let me change that to the images portion. There we go, here are the images, and then we'll start with images, I think it's 9-1. There we go. Okay, so let me change my share and we'll get crack rocking. There's really not too much. Still not letting it pop up, so hold on. There we go. Okay, so here we start in the upper extremity. We have the deltoid muscle. Then you have triceps brachii, biceps brachii, number 3, and brachialis is number 4. I'm going to suggest also that if you cannot come to class and look at some of these models, I really think it helps, even though the majority of the pictures are going to be pictures like this that you can see. There are some from another image database that use different color arrows and things. So I would maybe come in and take a look at them if you can. If not, I have the videos up there that show me reviewing all this with a phone camera that's on YouTube. So use that because that gives you a little bit more dimension, to what you're looking at. Okay, and so one is the deltoid, triceps brachii, biceps brachii, and brachialis. Okay, then we have the forearm area, distal to the wrist. We have on the palm side of the hand, the flexor compartment, and on the dorsum of the hand, the back of your hand, that part of your forearm is the extensor compartment or the extensor group. All those muscles all have individual names, but you just need to know them as a group. Hand flexors or hand extensors. Okay, then this takes us to the leg model. I call it a leg on a stick model. And we're looking from medial to lateral because we can see into the pelvis. This happens to be a left leg. So here at that blue area, I think it's a number 2, that's your pubic symphysis. You're looking into the pelvis. And so number 1 is pointing to the iliopsoas muscle, the iliopsoas muscle. Iliopsoas. Okay, now we turn the model around and we're essentially looking at the butt. So I personally would have had at least 3 numbers on here because you can identify the muscles around the posterior aspect, of the pelvis, as well as right here, just slightly to the anterior aspect. But the next slide, I believe, identifies tensor fascia lata. Right, so here are the muscles of the butt you essentially have to identify. Gluteus medius is number 1. And gluteus maximus is number 2. As we roll around farther toward the anterior, like I said, this is the same picture as before. You were identifying gluteus medius and gluteus maximus, but out to the lateral, slightly anterior aspect is another muscle called tensor fascia lata. I call it the coffee drink muscle, tensor fascia latae. So that's tensor fascia lata or latae. Okay, so now we have the same view. You're still essentially looking at someone's butt here. It's a left leg, but we're looking at the muscles on the posterior aspect, and those are the hamstring family of muscles. So if you're looking at the butt, then someone's pointing to, or there are arrows on the muscles inferior to that, then we'll look at the hamstring muscles. We have number 1, which is biceps femoris, number 2, which is semimembranosus, and number 3, which is semitendinosus. They all originate from the same point, the ischial tuberosity. The only insertion and origin insertion you really have to know is biceps femoris, number 1, that inserts out to the lateral aspect of the knee, and the only 2 bones below the knee joint are the fibula and the tibia, and that's what it inserts on. So these pictures, remember, are just identifying these muscles, but the information from the exercises, origins, insertions, or actions, are as per each instructor, and I've narrowed them down less than 50%. So use those models and then go, okay, go back to biceps femoris. Wow, that's the only one I have to know an origin and insertion for. What are they? Okay, now we're looking at the inner thigh. All right, so we're looking kind of lateral to medial, or actually medial to lateral, from the inside of the thigh. And most of the muscles to the inside of the thigh contract and bring your knees together, or what's called adduct. So number 1 is adductor magnus, I beg your pardon. Number 2 is gracilis, and number 3 is adductor longus. adductor magnus, gracilis, and adductor longus. All right, now we're looking at the anterior aspect of the thigh. All right, so if you can see your patella, which is over here to the left-hand side, and rotate this picture so it's number 1 is to the superior aspect, and number 4 and 2 are to the inferior aspect. Below that, you can see the kneecap or the patella. Number 1 is called the Sartorius muscle. It actually originates from the ilium, and it travels across the thigh and inserts at the knee joint, and just below that on the tibia, on what's called pes anserine, some connective tissue. But that externally rotates the femur, flexes the hip, and flexes the knee. Number 2 is vastus lateralis. Number 3 is rectus femoris, and number 4 is vastus medialis. So vastus means broad, and medialis means the medial aspect of the knee. Thus, that's why 4 is vastus medialis. 2 would be vastus lateralis, because of the lateral aspect of the knee. And rectus femoris, number 3, is straight up and down and in the middle. Do not confuse with rectus abdominis, which is in the center vertical muscle in the abdominal cavity, in part of the abdominal muscles. These 3, 2, 3, and 4 are in the quadricep family of muscles. They all insert on the tibial tuberosity. Tibia is just distal to the patella, and the proximal bump on it is for the insertion in essentially all your quadricep muscles. But I believe you only have to know rectus femoris. Rectus femoris originates on the ilium, crosses the hip, crosses the knee, and then inserts on the tibia. So it actually acts on 2 joints. It helps flex the hip and extend the knee. All right, so number 1 is Sartorius, vastus lateralis, rectus femoris, vastus medialis. Okay, now we look at the muscles below the knee. So to the left-hand side is the knee joint patella. To the right-hand side, you can see the foot, and you can see the calcaneus on the inferior aspect. So you have only 1 muscle you have to identify on the back of your calf, and 1 muscle to the anterior aspect of the tibia. Number 1 is gastrocnemius, and number 2 is tibialis anterior. Gastrocnemius and tibialis anterior. Gastro has a slight typo or misspelling here in gastrocnemius. It's multiple choice, so just choose the right answer. And then here, I think he meant to include pages that showed the lower extremities, and somehow it's still the head and neck area, but that's the last image. Okay, so once you've done lab 8, lab 9 kind of keeps rolling. Luckily, we're not doing fill in the blank. Normally, you would have to be able to spell all these muscles, but we don't have to do that for this second exam. So it should be a fairly easy task for you guys. You've been digesting a good amount of material rather quickly. So just continue on. I will have a live Zoom briefly at the beginning of lab on Thursday, because unless we're doing histology and things, it's really no point in just showing you more pictures of the models that you have pictures of. But I would use the video that I put up there if you can't come to lab, even for just 15 minutes, a half an hour, and take a quick look at the lab, at the models, because the following week is exam 2. So I would take as much opportunity as I can to make sure that you don't have any questions remaining about any of the content. And otherwise, I will use that live Zoom as a form of attendance. Stay in there as long as you want. And I'll help students in the classroom. I will say that last week we actually practiced using the microscopes, and that is a tool you really need to be adept with by the time you get to microbiology. I don't know what medium of AMP2 you might use for the summer, or for the fall before you take microbiology, but usually we have you doing a good amount of, reasonable amount of hands-on using the microscopes, because there's nothing worse than getting into the microbiology class and the instructor looks at you, kind of sneers because you don't know what you're doing in the microscope. And now they have to teach you how to use the microscope in microbiology when you should have been doing this in AMP1 and AMP2. And although we've been Zooming and using all these other media, I would take this opportunity to look a little rough and kind of foolish in AMP1 and AMP2 than in microbiology. I'm just telling you, that's my advice, but it's entirely up to you. I'm there to help you. If you can come to lab this week, and we start at 3:30, but you can't get there till like 4:30, just send me, an email, through the course page quickly, so that, I stay long enough for you to get there. But if there's no one there, then I'm not going to stay there by myself. So I highly encourage you, and welcome you to come back into the classroom and take a look at these. It doesn't take that long. It takes about 15, 30 minutes to look at all the models. Okay, so I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to end the video. I hope to see you Thursday. Bye.